My girlfriend said, "Fine. If you don't like it, find someone else." I said, "Already did," and watched the expression melt from her face. Veronica and I had been together for 3 years when she started getting comfortable. Too comfortable. The kind of comfortable where she'd invite her ex-boyfriend Dylan to our anniversary dinner because he's just a friend now. "You're being paranoid," she'd say whenever I questioned their late-night texting sessions. "He's practically my brother. Brothers don't send pictures of their abs at midnight," but I kept that observation to myself. The signs had been there from the beginning, if I'm being honest. Dylan was the ghost at every feast, the name that came up in every story about her past. When we first started dating, Veronica would tell me about their amazing connection and how they'd broken up because of bad timing. She painted him as the one who got away, the perfect guy she'd lost to circumstances beyond their control. I should have run then. But Veronica was magnetic, the kind of woman who could make you feel like the center of the universe when she focused her attention on you. She had this way of looking at me during those early months, like I was the answer to every question she'd ever asked. When someone looks at you like that, you convince yourself that you've won, that you're the one she chose over all the others. The first red flag was our 6-month anniversary. We were at dinner when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her whole face lit up. "Dylan got a promotion," she announced, showing me the text like I should be equally excited. "That's nice," I said, trying to hide my confusion. Why was her ex texting her career updates? "I should call him to celebrate," she said, already reaching for her phone. "Right now? During our anniversary dinner?" She paused, looking at me like I'd suggested something unreasonable. "It'll just be 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes stretched into 20. I sat there eating cold pasta while she giggled into her phone about inside jokes I wasn't part of, congratulating another man on his success during what was supposed to be our romantic evening. When she finally hung up, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Sorry about that. He was just so excited to share the news with me." "Why you specifically?" "We're close friends. We tell each other everything." And that should have been my first clue that I wasn't dating Veronica. I was dating the placeholder she'd keep warm until Dylan decided he wanted her back. By our first-year anniversary, the pattern was established. Dylan would text her during our dates. She'd interrupt our conversations to respond to his messages. When we went out with her friends, she'd spend half the evening updating them on Dylan's latest relationship drama, career moves, or family situations. "You talk about him a lot," I mentioned one night after she'd spent an hour analyzing why Dylan's latest girlfriend had broken up with him. "He's going through a hard time," she said defensively. "Good friends support each other." "Do you talk to him about me this much?" The pause before she answered told me everything I needed to know. "That's different," she said finally. "You two don't know each other." What she meant was, Dylan's life is interesting to me in ways yours isn't. Dylan's problems matter to me more than your concerns. Dylan gets the emotional energy you think you deserve as my boyfriend. But I convinced myself I was being insecure. Veronica was beautiful, successful, the kind of woman other men stared at when we walked into restaurants. If she was with me instead of Dylan, that had to mean something, right? Our second year was when things got really twisted. Dylan moved back to our city after graduate school, taking a job at a tech startup downtown. Suddenly, Veronica's mysterious friend became a real presence in our lives. She'd mentioned grabbing coffee with him, going to his housewarming party, helping him pick out furniture for his new apartment. "I should meet this guy," I said after she spent an entire weekend helping him set up his place. "He's clearly important to you." "You'll love him," she said, but something in her voice suggested she was more worried about whether he'd love me. When I finally met Dylan at a group happy hour, I understood the problem immediately. He was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average height, charming where I was introspective, the kind of guy who commanded attention just by walking into a room. Worse, he had history with Veronica that I could never compete with. They had inside jokes, shared memories, an entire language of references I wasn't part of. But the real gut punch was watching how Veronica transformed around him. She became more animated, funnier, more beautiful somehow. She laughed at his stories in a way she never laughed at mine. She touched his arm when she spoke to him. She lit up from the inside, and I realized with growing horror that this was who she really was. This vibrant, electric version of herself that only emerged when Dylan was around. With me, she was a dimmer version of herself. Comfortable, sure, but not alive in the same way. That night, after the happy hour, I confronted her about what I'd seen. "You're different around him," I said as we got ready for bed. "Different how?" "Happier. More yourself." She was quiet for a long moment, brushing her teeth with more concentration than necessary. "He brings out a playful side of me," she said finally. "We have history, and I don't bring that out in you." Another pause. "You bring out other things. Stability, comfort, stability, comfort." The words every man dreams of hearing from the woman he loves. I should have ended it then. But I was 26 years old and convinced that love meant fighting for someone, proving your worth, earning the kind of devotion she gave Dylan so effortlessly. So I doubled down. I tried to be more charming, funnier, more spontaneous. I planned elaborate dates and surprise weekend trips. I bought thoughtful gifts and learned to cook her favorite meals. None of it worked. If anything, my efforts seemed to annoy her. She'd roll her eyes when I surprised her with flowers, complain that I was trying too hard when I planned special evenings. Meanwhile, Dylan could send her a simple meme, and she'd screenshot it to show her friends how funny he was. The breaking point should have come during our second anniversary trip to Napa. I'd saved for months to afford the luxury resort, the wine tastings, the couple's massage. It was supposed to be perfect, romantic, the kind of weekend that would deepen our connection. Instead, Dylan had a family emergency. His grandmother was in the hospital, and he needed someone to talk to. Guess who he called? Veronica spent our entire anniversary weekend on the phone with Dylan, comforting him, researching hospitals near his hometown, offering to drive up and be with him during this difficult time. She was present in body, but completely absent in spirit. Her emotional energy focused 300 miles away on another man's crisis. When I finally snapped and asked if she could put her phone away for 1 hour so we could enjoy the dinner I'd planned, she looked at me like I was heartless. "His grandmother is dying," she said. "How can you be so selfish?" But when my own grandmother had passed away 6 months earlier, Veronica had sent flowers and given me a perfunctory hug. She hadn't dropped everything to comfort me. She hadn't spent hours on the phone helping me process my grief. I'd gotten sympathy, but Dylan got devotion. That's when I started to understand the difference between being someone's boyfriend and being someone's priority. Last month, she crossed a line I didn't know existed. We were supposed to spend my birthday weekend at a cabin I'd rented 2 hours north. I'd planned everything: her favorite wine, homemade pasta, even bought the ring I'd been saving for. The engagement ring had been sitting in my sock drawer for 3 months. I'd bought it after convincing myself that marriage would fix whatever was broken between us. That official commitment would make her see me the way she saw Dylan. That a ring would transform me from the comfortable choice into the chosen one. Looking back, I realize how desperately sad that was, believing that a piece of jewelry could compete with genuine chemistry, that a legal contract could manufacture the kind of connection she had with someone else. Friday morning, she called with devastating news. "Dylan's going through a really rough breakup," she said. "I invited him to come with us. He needs support right now." I sat there holding my phone, staring at the engagement ring, feeling something inside me finally break. "You invited your ex to my birthday weekend? Don't be selfish. This is bigger than your birthday, bigger than my birthday." The birthday she'd forgotten the year before. The birthday she'd almost canceled because Dylan had a work crisis. The birthday that was clearly less important than whatever emotional crisis Dylan was manufacturing this time. I stared at the engagement ring sitting on my dresser. 3 years. 3 years of her putting Dylan's feelings before mine, canceling our plans when he needed emotional support, defending him when he accidentally sent inappropriate messages. "You know what?" I said. "You're right. Go with Dylan. I hope you have a wonderful time." "Wait, are you breaking up with me over this?" "No, I'm just done competing with him for your attention." The silence on the other end stretched for so long I thought she'd hung up. "You're being dramatic," she said finally. "We'll celebrate your birthday when we get back. Will we? Or will Dylan have another crisis that weekend too?" "I don't like what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it directly. You've spent 3 years choosing him over me, and I'm tired of pretending that's normal. He's just a friend." "No, he's not. He's the man you wish you were with, and I'm the man you settled for because he wasn't available." She hung up on me. 2 hours later, she texted, "Dylan and I are leaving for the cabin. We can talk when I get back." She went to the cabin with Dylan, posted photos on social media of them hiking, making s'mores, sharing drinks by the fire. Everything I'd planned to do with her. But more than that, she looked happy in those photos. Genuinely, radiantly happy in a way I hadn't seen her look in months. The comments on her posts were brutal for someone paying attention. "You two look so cute together. When are you guys getting back together?" Power couple vibes. Not a single person asked where I was. Not one of her friends seemed surprised that her boyfriend wasn't part of her birthday weekend plans. That's when I realized that everyone, literally everyone, could see what I'd been denying for 3 years. I wasn't her boyfriend. I was her safety net. That weekend, I called my college friend Becca. We'd stayed close over the years, texting regularly, meeting for coffee when she was in town. She'd always been the one who got away. We dated briefly in sophomore year before she transferred schools. "I saw Veronica's posts," Becca said when I called. "I'm sorry. Are you free this weekend? I could use a friend." We spent Saturday walking through the city, talking about everything except Veronica. Becca was finishing her master's in architecture, designing sustainable housing projects. She was passionate, brilliant, everything I'd forgotten I wanted in someone. More importantly, when Becca looked at me, I could see myself reflected in her eyes, not as a placeholder or a backup plan, but as someone worth choosing. She laughed at my jokes, not because she was being polite, but because she genuinely found me funny. She asked follow-up questions about my work, my dreams, my thoughts on everything from urban planning to our favorite movies. It had been so long since someone was genuinely interested in my inner life that I'd forgotten what that felt like. When she kissed me outside the coffee shop, it felt like coming home. "I've been waiting 3 years for this," she whispered. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been watching you try to make someone love you the way you deserve to be loved, and it's been heartbreaking. You could see it too? Everyone could see it except you. Veronica posts photos with Dylan tagged as her best friend, while you're standing right next to her looking like a ghost. It's been painful to watch." That night, Becca and I talked until sunrise. Not just about Veronica and Dylan, but about everything we'd missed during our years apart. Her work designing affordable housing for displaced families, my promotion to senior analyst at the environmental consulting firm, the books we'd read, the movies that made us cry, the dreams we'd put on hold. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" I asked as we watched the sun come up from her apartment balcony. "You were with someone. I wasn't going to be the other woman. Even though I knew she was emotionally cheating on you with her ex? Yes. Because that's not who I am. I don't compete for men. Either they choose me or they don't." The contrast was stark. While Veronica demanded constant reassurance about Dylan's place in her life, Becca simply stated her boundaries and lived by them. While Veronica kept me guessing about where I stood, Becca was clear about what she wanted and what she wouldn't accept. We spent the next month talking every day. Not just texting like Veronica and Dylan, but real conversations about our dreams, our fears, our future. Becca made me remember who I was, before I became the boyfriend competing for scraps of attention. "You know what I love about you?" she said one night as we cooked dinner together in her kitchen. "What?" "You don't make me feel like I'm auditioning for the role of girlfriend. You make me feel like you want me here." It was such a simple statement, but it hit me like a physical blow. That's exactly what my relationship with Veronica had felt like. A 3-year audition for a part she'd already given to someone else. When Veronica came back from her weekend, she acted like nothing had happened. "Dylan and I are just friends," she insisted when I remained cold and distant. "I don't understand why you're being so dramatic about this. How would you feel if I spent your birthday weekend with my ex? That's different." "How is it different? You don't have the same kind of friendship with any of your exes." "Right, because I have boundaries." She rolled her eyes. "Not everything is about boundaries. Some things are about trust." "You're right, and I don't trust you anymore." The words hung in the air between us. We both knew I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. You can't unknow that your partner prioritizes someone else's emotional needs over your relationship. You can't unsee the way they light up for someone else in ways they never light up for you. For 2 weeks, I said nothing about Becca. I watched Veronica text Dylan during our dinner dates, watched her light up when he called, watched her choose him over me in a dozen small ways she thought I wouldn't notice. But I was also building something new with Becca. We had lunch dates during work breaks. We took evening walks through her neighborhood. We talked about the future in a way I'd never been able to with Veronica, not because she wasn't interested in planning ahead, but because she couldn't envision a future that didn't include Dylan somehow. "What are you thinking about?" Becca asked one evening as we sat on her couch, her head on my shoulder. "I'm thinking about how easy this is," I said. "How uncomplicated." "Is that good or bad?" "It's revolutionary. I forgot that relationships could feel peaceful. What did it feel like before?" I thought about the constant anxiety of never knowing where I stood with Veronica, the way I'd analyze every text message for hidden meaning, the exhaustion of competing for attention with someone who wasn't even trying. "Like being hungry all the time," I said finally. "Like no matter what I did, I could never get enough of what I needed to feel secure. And now? Now I feel fed." Becca laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." "Really? That I feel emotionally nourished?" "Yes, because it means you're not trying to fill some void in me, and I'm not trying to fill some void in you. We're just enjoying each other." It was a revelation. For 3 years with Veronica, I'd been trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Love, attention, priority, basic consideration. With Becca, these things flowed naturally. She chose me every day, not because I'd proved myself worthy, but because she simply wanted to. Yesterday, everything exploded. I found Veronica's laptop open to their message thread, months of conversations I'd never seen. Dylan writing about how much he missed her. Veronica responding that she missed him too, that she was only staying with me out of comfort, not love. But it was worse than just the emotional affair I'd suspected. They were planning to get back together. Dylan had been single for 6 months and was finally ready to try again with Veronica. She was just working up the courage to leave me. The final message was from last night. "I wish I could be with you instead." His response, "Leave him. You know you want to." Her response, "Soon. I just need to figure out the right way to do it." I screenshotted everything, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and relief. Rage at being lied to for months. Relief at finally having proof that I wasn't crazy, that the emotional distance I'd been feeling was real and justified. But more than anything, I felt free. Free from the constant doubt. Free from competing for scraps of affection. Free to choose someone who'd been choosing me all along. This morning, Veronica found me packing. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "Moving in with someone who actually wants me around." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm tired of being your backup plan while you figure out your feelings for Dylan." She crossed her arms, the picture of righteous indignation. "You're being ridiculous. Nothing's happening between us." I showed her the screenshots. Her face went white. "You went through my private messages? Your laptop was open. I saw my name and got curious about what you really think of me." "Those messages don't mean anything. They mean everything. You told him you're only with me out of comfort, that you wish you could be with him instead, that you're planning to leave me as soon as you figure out how." "I was just venting." "For 3 years?" She stared at the evidence on my phone, realizing she'd been caught. I watched her cycle through emotions. Denial, anger, bargaining, desperate attempts to reframe the narrative. "You don't understand," she said finally. "Dylan and I have this connection. I understand perfectly. You've been having an emotional affair while keeping me around for security. You've been planning your exit strategy while letting me believe we had a future together. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're in love with someone else and have been for our entire relationship. I was just too stupid to accept it." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "I do love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having someone safe and reliable while you wait for Dylan to want you back. But you don't love me." The truth of it hit both of us at the same time. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, realizing there was nothing she could say. How do you argue with someone who's just read months of evidence proving they're not the person you really want? "Fine," she said, her voice cold and sharp. If you don't like it, find someone else. I smiled. Already did. The expression melted from her face. What? You heard me. I found someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm competing for basic respect. Who? She whispered. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Veronica and I both turned toward the sound, but I was the only one smiling. That would be Becca, I said, walking toward the door. She's here to help me move my stuff to her place. Veronica's mouth fell open. Becca? Your college friend? The one you've always been jealous of? Yeah. I opened the door, and there stood Becca, stunning in her flowing sundress, holding 2 coffee cups and wearing the kind of genuine smile I'd forgotten existed. Ready to get out of here? She asked, looking past me to where Veronica stood frozen in shock. More than ready, I replied, taking one of the coffees. Becca stepped inside, extending her hand to Veronica with polite professionalism. You must be Veronica. I've heard so much about you. The way she said it, not cruel, just matter of fact, made it clear she'd heard about Dylan, the canceled plans, the constant drama. But there was no malice in her voice, no petty satisfaction. She was simply acknowledging a situation we all knew to be true. Veronica's face flushed red. How long has this been going on? Since your birthday weekend with Dylan, I said, grabbing another box from the kitchen counter. While you were posting couples photos with your ex, I was remembering what it felt like to be someone's first choice. You cheated on me? Becca laughed, a sound like wind chimes. He didn't cheat. He waited until he was emotionally done with you before pursuing anything with me. Unlike some people, he has integrity. The dig about Dylan wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Veronica turned on me, desperate. You can't just leave. We've been together for 3 years, and you've been emotionally cheating for most of them, I replied, taping up the box of books. I'm done pretending that's normal. Dylan and you have been having an emotional affair, Becca interrupted calmly. The only reason it never became physical is because he's been stringing you along while dating other people. Veronica's face crumpled. That's not true. I pulled out my phone and showed her Dylan's Instagram story from last night. Him with a blonde girl at a restaurant, tagged as date night with my gorgeous girlfriend. He posted this while you were texting him about leaving me, I said gently. He's been playing both of us, Veronica. The difference is I figured it out first. She stared at the photo, her whole worldview crashing down. For 3 years, she'd convinced herself that Dylan was the answer to some question I'd never been able to satisfy. She'd built an entire fantasy around their inevitable reunion, their perfect love story, their destiny to be together. Now she was seeing what I'd suspected all along. He'd never wanted her back. He just liked having her available for attention when his other relationships failed. He liked knowing he could pull her away from me whenever he needed an ego boost. He liked the power of being able to disrupt our relationship without having to commit to anything himself. But you love me, she whispered, tears starting to fall. I did, I said, feeling a surprising lack of anger. But love isn't enough when the other person is always looking over your shoulder for someone better. And that was the truth that neither of us had been willing to speak for 3 years. I had loved her, desperately, completely, pathetically. But she had never loved me back the same way. I was the consolation prize, the safe harbor, the placeholder she kept warm while waiting for her real life to begin. Becca squeezed my hand supportively, then picked up one of my boxes. I'll start loading these in the car, she said, giving Veronica space to process. After Becca left, Veronica collapsed onto our couch, the one I'd be leaving behind along with everything else we'd accumulated together. I never meant for this to happen, she said through her tears. Yes, you did, I replied, not unkindly. Maybe not consciously, but every choice you made put Dylan's needs before mine. Every canceled date, every time you defended his inappropriate behavior, every moment you made me feel like I was competing for you, that was intentional. I thought you'd always be there, she admitted. I thought I could figure out my feelings without losing you. That's not how relationships work. You can't keep someone as backup while you explore other options. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Do you really love her? I thought about Becca's laugh, the way she listened when I talked about my work, how she never made me feel like I was interrupting her life by existing in it. I thought about how she'd waited 3 years for me to figure out what she'd known all along, that Veronica and I were wrong for each other. I think I could, I said honestly. She makes me feel like myself again. And I didn't? You made me feel like a placeholder. The truth of that statement hung in the air between us. Veronica covered her face with her hands, finally understanding the damage she'd caused. Not just to me, but to herself. She'd spent 3 years chasing someone who didn't want her while pushing away someone who did. What am I supposed to do now? She asked. Call Dylan. Tell him you're single. See if he's actually interested in dating you or if he was just enjoying the attention. What if he's not? Then you'll learn the same lesson I did, that chasing someone who doesn't choose you is a waste of time. Becca returned for another load, moving efficiently around the apartment I'd shared with Veronica for 2 years. She'd been in our space for 20 minutes and already fit better than Dylan ever had. There was no awkwardness, no tension, no sense that she was intruding on something sacred. She belonged in my life in a way that felt natural and right. The car's almost full, she told me. Just a few more boxes. As I gathered my remaining belongings, Veronica watched from the couch like she was witnessing the end of the world. And in a way, she was. The fantasy she'd been living in, where she could have her cake and eat it too, where she could keep me while pursuing Dylan, where everyone would just accept her divided loyalties, was finally collapsing. Can I ask you something? She said to Becca. Becca paused, a box balanced in her arms. Sure. How long have you been in love with him? Becca considered the question seriously. Since college. But I respected your relationship, so I never said anything. It wasn't until he called me that weekend, broken and confused about why his girlfriend had chosen her ex over him, that I realized you didn't value what you had. I did value him, Veronica protested. No, Becca said gently. You valued the security he provided while you explored whether you wanted Dylan more. That's not the same thing. The finality in her voice made Veronica flinch, because it was true, and we all knew it. For 3 years, I'd been Veronica's safety net while she tried to figure out how to get Dylan back. I'd been the reliable option, the one who'd be there no matter how badly she treated me, the backup plan she could always fall back on. But Becca was right. That wasn't love. That was convenience. An hour later, we'd loaded everything I cared about into Becca's SUV. Standing in the doorway of what had been our apartment, I felt lighter than I had in months. All the weight I'd been carrying, the doubt, the constant anxiety, the exhausting effort of trying to earn love that should have been freely given, was finally gone. This is really it? Veronica asked from behind me. This is it. Will you forgive me someday? I turned to look at her one last time, beautiful, broken, finally understanding what she'd lost. I forgive you now, I said, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'm coming back. She nodded, accepting the distinction. Be happy, she whispered. I plan to be. Becca and I drove away in comfortable silence, leaving 3 years of emotional exhaustion in the rearview mirror. But as we drove through the city toward her apartment, our apartment now, I realized this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. How are you feeling? Becca asked as we pulled into her parking space. Free, I said without hesitation, like I can breathe again. Any regrets? Only that it took me so long to see what was right in front of me. She smiled. Sometimes we have to go through the wrong person to appreciate the right one. That night, in Becca's apartment, we ordered takeout and talked until 3 a.m. about everything we'd missed during our years apart. Her work designing affordable housing for displaced families, my promotion to senior analyst at the environmental consulting firm, the books we'd read, the movies that made us cry, the dreams we'd put on hold. But more than that, we talked about us. About the connection we'd felt in college that neither of us had ever forgotten. About how she'd watched me struggle with Veronica from afar, wanting to reach out but respecting the boundaries of my relationship. About how I'd thought about her over the years, wondering what might have been if she hadn't transferred schools. I have a confession, she said as we lay in her bed, moonlight streaming through the gauze curtains. What's that? I stalked your social media for 3 years. I knew every anniversary, every vacation, every time you looked unhappy in photos. I laughed. And you waited anyway? I figured if you were meant to be with her, you'd be happy. If you weren't, you'd eventually realize it. Very patient of you. I learned patience watching you choose someone who didn't choose you back. I wasn't going to make the same mistake. The contrast was so stark it was almost painful to think about. While Veronica had spent 3 years trying to make me compete for her attention, Becca had simply waited for me to realize I deserved better. While Veronica had demanded constant reassurance about Dylan's place in her life, Becca had quietly built a life she was proud of and waited for me to find my way to her. What if I hadn't figured it out? I asked. What if I'd married her? Then I would have moved on. I wasn't going to wait forever. How much longer would you have given me? She was quiet for a moment, tracing patterns on my chest with her finger. Honestly, I was starting to date other people. There's a guy at work who's been asking me out for months. I was going to say yes next week. The thought of losing her, of being so caught up in the wrong relationship that I missed my chance with the right person, sent a chill through me. I'm glad you didn't. Me too. 2 weeks later, Dylan called Veronica. I know because she texted me at 2 a.m., drunk and desperate. You were right. He doesn't want me. He just liked knowing he could have me. I showed the message to Becca, who was grading design portfolios at the kitchen table. Are you going to respond? She asked. Should I? That depends. Do you want to help her heal or do you want to move forward with your life? I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me felt sorry for Veronica. She'd spent 3 years sacrificing a real relationship for a fantasy, and now she was facing the reality that the fantasy had never been real. Dylan had never wanted her back. He'd just enjoyed the ego boost of having her pine for him while he dated other people. But the larger part of me knew that responding would be a mistake. Veronica needed to learn to process her emotions without depending on the very person she'd hurt. She needed to figure out who she was when she wasn't defining herself in relation to the men in her life. I deleted the message without responding. Over the next few months, I watched Veronica's social media from a distance, the way you might check on a car accident as you drive past. The immediate aftermath was brutal. Dylan had apparently told her that their weekend at the cabin had been a mistake and that he was in a serious relationship now. The photos of them together, which she'd left up for weeks after our breakup, suddenly disappeared. She went through what looked like a classic rebound phase, partying every weekend, posting thirst-trap photos with captions about living her best life, dating a series of guys who looked suspiciously like Dylan, but none of it looked genuine. It looked like someone trying to prove something to people who weren't paying attention. She's having a hard time, Becca observed one evening, when Veronica's latest Instagram story showed her drunk crying at a club. Should I reach out? Do you want to? I thought about it honestly. I feel bad for her, but I don't miss her. Then don't reach out. Feeling bad for someone and wanting them back in your life are two different things. Becca was right, as she was about most things. I could feel sympathy for Veronica's situation without feeling responsible for fixing it. I could hope she found happiness without needing to be part of that journey. Meanwhile, Becca and I were building something real. We found a new apartment together, one with space for her drafting table and my photography equipment. She started her own sustainable design firm, and I'd been promoted to partner at my consulting company. We were creating a life that neither of us had to shrink ourselves to fit into. The difference was remarkable. With Veronica, I'd spent 3 years trying to be someone I thought she'd love more. With Becca, I could just be myself, messy, imperfect, sometimes moody, and know that she'd choose me anyway. You know what I love about this? She said one morning as we made breakfast together in our new kitchen. What? We're not trying to fix each other. We're just enjoying each other. It was such a simple concept, but it had been entirely absent from my relationship with Veronica. With her, every interaction had felt like a test I might fail. With Becca, every interaction felt like a choice we were both making to be together. 3 months after leaving Veronica, she started dating someone new, a guy named Trevor who worked in finance and seemed to worship the ground she walked on. She posted photos of their elaborate dates, expensive gifts, weekend trips to wine country, everything she'd wanted from Dylan. She was getting from someone who actually wanted to give it. She looks happy, Becca observed, glancing at my phone as we hiked through Golden Gate Park. She does, I agreed. Good for her. Do you miss it? The drama, the intensity? I thought about the question seriously. There had been something addictive about the cycle with Veronica. The fights, the makeups, the constant uncertainty about where I stood. It had felt like passion at the time, but I could see now that it was just anxiety masquerading as love. I miss feeling needed, I admitted. But I don't miss feeling unwanted. Becca stopped walking and turned to face me, her cheeks flushed from exertion and sunlight. You're needed, she said simply. By me, every day, even when you leave dishes in the sink and forget to buy milk. Especially then? Especially then. We kissed there on the trail, tourists walking around us, and I understood the difference between drama and love, between being chosen and being settled for. The night Trevor proposed to Veronica, 8 months after our breakup, she called me. I was at work late, and her name on my phone screen was so unexpected that I almost didn't answer. Congratulations, I said when she told me the news. I saw the photos. You look happy. I am happy, she said, but something in her voice suggested she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Trevor he's really good to me. That's what you deserve. Is it weird? Talking to me? I looked around my empty office, thinking about Becca at home making dinner for both of us, probably wondering where I was. Not weird, I said. Just different. We're different people now. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. For everything. For Dylan. For taking you for granted, for making you feel like you weren't enough. You were enough. You were more than enough. I was just too stupid to see it. I appreciate that, I said, and meant it. But you don't owe me an apology. We were both doing the best we could with what we knew at the time. Are you happy? She asked. Very. With Becca? With my life. Becca's a big part of that, but it's bigger than just her. I like who I am now. I'm glad, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. You deserve to be happy. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a few more minutes, processing the conversation. There was no anger left, no resentment, no longing, just a sense of closure, of a chapter finally ending properly. When I got home, Becca was in the kitchen, humming while she stirred something that smelled amazing. Who was that? She asked, not looking up from the stove. Veronica. She got engaged. How do you feel about that? Happy for her, and grateful that it's not me. Becca smiled. Good answer. 6 months after leaving Veronica, Becca and I moved into a larger apartment together, one with space for her drafting table and my photography equipment. She'd started her own sustainable design firm, and I'd been promoted to partner at my consulting company. We were building something together instead of competing for attention. The night we signed our lease, we celebrated with champagne on our empty living room floor. Any regrets? Becca asked, her head on my shoulder. About what? Leaving her, starting over, taking a chance on us. I looked around our bare apartment, imagining it filled with furniture we'd choose together, art we'd collect on travels, the life we'd build from scratch. None, I said. You? Only that it took so long. 1 year later, Dylan sent me a friend request on social media. I showed it to Becca, curious about her reaction. He probably wants to see if you're happy, she said. Guys like him need to know they didn't miss out on anything good. What do you think I should do? Accept it. Let him see exactly how good your life is without either of them in it. I accepted the request and immediately posted a photo from our recent trip to Portland. Becca and me kissing under a waterfall, both of us glowing with the kind of happiness that can't be faked. He liked the photo within minutes, then sent a direct message. She looks good, man. Happy for you. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Dylan had gotten what he wanted. Veronica's attention for 3 years without having to commit to anything. Now he was probably realizing that he'd cost me something real while giving her nothing but false hope. But his loss, ultimately, had been my gain. If he hadn't been constantly interfering in my relationship with Veronica, I might never have realized how wrong we were for each other. I might have married her, spent decades wondering why I always felt like I was competing for something that should have been freely given. 2 years after leaving Veronica, I proposed to Becca on the same trail where she'd told me I was wanted. I'd carried the ring, the same one I'd planned to give Veronica, for months, waiting for the right moment. Will you marry me? I asked, dropping to one knee beside the eucalyptus grove where we'd shared our first hiking trail kiss. Yes, she said immediately, tears streaming down her face. Yes, obviously, yes. As I slipped the ring onto her finger, I realized something profound. This ring had never been for Veronica. It had been waiting for the right woman all along. I'd just been too confused to recognize the difference. The engagement photos Becca's photographer friend took that day were stunning, natural, unposed, full of genuine joy. When we posted them online, the response was overwhelming. Friends from college who'd watched me struggle through the Veronica years commented with variations of, "Finally," and "This is how happy you're supposed to look." Veronica liked the announcement photo, but didn't comment. 3 hours later, she posted her own engagement photos with Trevor. They were beautiful, but felt performative, like she was proving something rather than celebrating something. Interesting timing, Becca observed. Think she's really happy? I think she's happy enough, and that's all that matters. We were married 8 months later in Becca's hometown in Oregon, surrounded by people who'd watched our love story unfold with patience and joy. My best man gave a speech about second chances and knowing your worth. Becca's maid of honor talked about waiting for the right person instead of settling for the available person. During our first dance, I whispered in my wife's ear, "Thank you for waiting for me." "Thank you for figuring it out," she whispered back. The wedding was everything my relationship with Veronica had never been. Easy, joyful, centered on what we were building together rather than what we were competing against. Our families blended naturally. Our friends celebrated without reservation. There was no drama, no last-minute crises, no sense that someone else should have been standing at the altar instead of me. It was perfect because it was right.
Now, 5 years after walking away from Veronica, we have a life that feels like everything I'd imagined adult love could be. Becca's firm designs affordable housing across 3 states. I've started my own environmental consulting company. We travel together, work together, dream together. We fight sometimes, but we fight fair, and we fight to stay together, not to win. Last month, we found out we're having a baby.
As we sat in the doctor's office staring at the ultrasound screen, I thought about the path that had brought us here. The weekend, Veronica chose Dylan over my birthday. The month I spent rediscovering myself with Becca. The courage it took to leave someone I'd loved for someone who loved me back. Any regrets now? Becca asked, echoing her question from our empty apartment years ago. I looked at the fuzzy image of our child, then at my wife's face glowing with anticipation. Only that it took me so long to realize you can't build a life with someone who's always looking for the exit. She squeezed my hand. Good thing some of us are patient. Good thing some of us are worth waiting for. 6 months from now, we'll welcome our daughter. We've already chosen her name, Hope, because that's what Becca gave me when I thought love meant fighting for scraps of attention. That's what I gave myself when I finally chose to walk away from someone who didn't choose me back. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed with Veronica, if I'd kept competing with Dylan for her heart. But the wondering never lasts long. The life I have now, stable, joyful, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership, is everything I didn't know I was missing. The morning Veronica told me to find someone else, she thought she was calling my bluff. She thought I'd beg, plead, promise to be less jealous, more understanding. She thought I'd fight harder for someone who'd never fought for me at all. Instead, I did exactly what she suggested. I found someone else, someone who'd been waiting for me to find my way home to her. Someone who chose me first, every day, without reservation or competition. And I've never looked back. Looking back now, I can see that Veronica did me a favor that day. By finally pushing me away completely, she forced me to face the truth I'd been avoiding for 3 years. I deserved better than being someone's backup plan. I deserved to be chosen, not settled for. I deserved love that felt like love, not like a constant audition for a part that had already been given to someone else. The hardest part wasn't leaving Veronica. The hardest part was admitting to myself that I'd wasted 3 years trying to earn something that should have been freely given. But even that wasn't really wasted time. It was education. It taught me the difference between love and convenience, between passion and anxiety, between being wanted and being needed. Now, when I watch Becca play with our daughter, when I see the way she lights up when I walk through the door, when I feel the peaceful certainty of being with someone who chose me and keeps choosing me every day, I'm grateful for every painful lesson that led me here. Because the truth is, some people come into your life to love you, and some people come into your life to teach you how to be loved. Veronica was the latter. She taught me what I wouldn't accept, what I deserved, and what real love should feel like by showing me what it wasn't. Becca was the former. She loved me back to myself, back to believing I was worth choosing, back to understanding that love shouldn't require constant proof of worthiness. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who teaches you how to be loved and the person who loves you turn out to be the same person. They just come into your life in the right order, after you've learned enough about yourself to recognize what you're looking at. 5 years later, I finally understand what Veronica meant when she told me to find someone else. She knew, even if she couldn't admit it at the time, that I deserved better than what she was able to give me. She knew that Dylan would always be the ghost at our feast, that I would always be competing with a fantasy she wasn't ready to let go of. In the end, telling me to find someone else wasn't cruelty. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me, and the best advice she'd ever given me. I found someone else, someone who makes me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly who I'm supposed to be with, living exactly the life I'm supposed to be living. And that, as it turns out, makes all the difference.